Aeroshell, Embraer, Tempest, Aerogroup, Des Moines Flying Service, and Muncie Aviation. And later this morning, we'll be announcing another name to that distinguished list. For many years, our program has benefited from the generous support of the TBM Owners Foundation. And is Misty here with us today? There you are. Thank you, Misty. Misty Stanistreet is the Executive Director of TBM OPA. Able Flight also receives generous support from the O'Donnell Family Foundation, the American Navion Society, and joining us today, I believe, I haven't seen him yet, and it's a little hard for me to see with these lights, so I apologize. A member of our advisory board who's a generous personal donor to Able Flight, Dr. Jeff Kane. Jeff, right here, Jeff Kane, thank you very much. And I believe with us, as year after year he is, Jim Irwin, Aircraft Spruce. Jim, are you here? There you are, Jim, thank you very much. We have some other very special guests who've joined us today. I believe it's six, 5 or 6 Able Flight pilots who are here to honor our new pilots. So from Wisconsin, is Peyton Walter here? So Peyton did not make it this year, but Sam Mahoney. Sam, if you're there, raise your hand.
Over here.
Okay, Sam. A man who trained here at Oshkosh in 2007 and became our second pilot, and now is a member of our advisory board, Sean O'Donnell. And from Virginia, these two guys, they're childhood friends. I think they met when they were 5. They became Able Flight pilots in the same year. And just a few days ago, they flew, one of them owns an airplane, and they flew that airplane from the Chesapeake, Virginia area into AirVenture in one day with 1 stop for fuel, an LSA, and they're both quadriplegics. That's Kevin Crombie and Eric Ingram right over here. And I don't know if Jessica Cox is still with us. I believe she had to leave, but she came by earlier. She's an Able Flight pilot. She came by earlier to say hello to our new pilots as well. And just to let you know, she's building an RB-10 with adapted controls. And I can't wait to see what those controls are, because we've been using some very interesting controls over the years in different airplanes. If those of you know Jessica, Born Without Arms, those are going to be some unique controls. So good luck to her and everybody on that project. So besides Jessica, Sam, Sean, they're all aircraft owners. I think we have 7 or 8 aircraft owners in Able Flight now, which is pretty impressive. And speaking of planes, we want to thank the owners of the 2 training aircraft that we use this year. We rent those planes each year. And yes, the owners get some money out of that, but it also means they're without their airplanes for 2 months each year during the best flying weather of the year. So Sean O'Donnell, once again, he rents his airplane to us. And then there's a gentleman in Louisiana who has an adapted Skyer. He himself is a paraplegic, and he allowed his airplane to come here, to come to Purdue for several months. That's David Levy. So each year, you hear me praise our friends and partners in this mission, the folks from Purdue University that teach flying so well. And you're going to meet the 2023 flight instructors in just a few minutes. But now I want to thank, I hope he's here, I want to thank the person who is our most important advocate at Purdue. Each year he goes to bat for us to be able, so that we can come back there and have this unique program. And it's been, I think, 13 years maybe now. So in the months leading up to the day that the students arrive, he works to make sure everything's in place for them. It's a critical job, and there's no one that I can think that can do this better than Dr. Brian Dillman. Brian, are you here? There he is. Thank you very much. And I say it's a critical job. It's somewhat of a thankless job, and it's also the guy that has to deal with me for 2 months. So, special guy. So thanks to all of you who've put things in place, funding, airplanes, instruction, all the logistical things that make this happen. So now we have an exciting announcement for you. It's exciting for me, I can tell you. It's the first time we've shared this news with anyone. For years, Able Flight has been very actively encouraging LSA manufacturers to offer adapted controls for their aircraft, especially if those aircraft have some other feature that makes them very attractive, not just for training, but for a person with a disability to own and fly. For example, a great feature would be room behind the seats to store a wheelchair. And while a number of companies have expressed an interest, the fact is that none have been able to allocate engineering, prototyping, and testing time to such a project. So we had to look for another solution. And we have some great news on how we're making this happen. Many of you have heard the remarkable story of a pilot named Clayton Smoltz, who wanted to fly his own Cirrus Vision Jet as a paraplegic. Being an engineer, Clayton decided to design his own controls and get the approval of the FAA. Stop and think about that for a second. But that's exactly what he did. Then with those controls, he earned a Vision Jet type rating. Clayton, with the help of engineers in his company, has agreed to do the work required to create a set of adaptive controls for an American-made LSA, the Vashon Ranger. He's doing so by donating his own time, asking that only out-of-pocket expenses for the employees' time they spend on the project be covered. So with the generous support of donor Jason Miller, if that name sounds familiar, he's one of the co-founders of ForeFlight, and of Aeroshell, that project is now underway. Once it's complete and Vashon approves the controls as an option, there'll be another adapted LSA in which people can learn to fly, and they can purchase for themselves. Clayton, are you with us today?
You should be hearing about it. We got held up on an old pattern, so
Okay.
He should be here in about 10 minutes.
Okay, when he gets here, maybe somebody can point out that that's Clayton, because
No roll, man.
because what an opportunity we had to work with someone like him. I mean, I think he had done, I'll digress for a second, maybe that was his third airplane that he did adaptive controls for, but it is the Vision Jet. Those of you know what that is, you can go over to Cirrus and take a look at it. That's a significant project, and kudos to that FAA inspector who signed off on that, because it's a good, solid design. He's proven it with many flights, and we're excited to have him to do this work for us, to be a partner in our mission. So keep watching for progress on that, and while you're here, you can go see the Vision Jet. It's only about 2 minutes away. It's right around the corner here. Go over and say hello to them and thank them for being willing to work with us on this project. Now I have the pleasure of honoring those who support and teach by giving their time to this unique mission. Let's begin with the Able Flight Volunteer of the Year Award. It's called the Seidel Award, named for a longtime friend of the program, Bob Seidel. When I founded Able Flight in 2006, one of the first people who showed real faith in the program was Bob. He convinced the company he worked for at the time to donate enough money to pay for one of the first 2 scholarships. That was a big aviation company, and Able Flight was unknown and unproven. But Bob made that happen. I'll always be grateful for his belief in this mission, and especially for taking action on that belief. This year, I'm very pleased to welcome Bob Seidel to the stage to present the award for Volunteer of the Year.
Morning.
Before I make the award for the Volunteer of the Year this year, I'd also like to recognize Charles. I think Charles is one of the most unsung, deserving individuals of any person I've ever met. Charles has been one of the finest examples of selflessness and giving to others. So what I'd like to do is let's all celebrate Charles. So each year this award is presented to someone who demonstrates exceptional service to the program. And we are excited that this year's recipient is also one of the 2023 flight instructors. Please welcome Amalia Ioannidis. Amalia also taught for Able Flight in 2022. And just minutes after last year's wing ceremony was over, Amalia told Charles that she wanted to come back and teach again in 2023. Then she was selected to serve as lead instructor and taking on many additional responsibilities, including helping to recruit other instructors and flight scheduling. And she did so while working with her own student, and she did an outstanding job. And on behalf of Able Flight, I am very proud to honor Amalia Ioannidis as the recipient of the Cy Hill Award for 2023.
Thank you, Bob, and congratulations on Amalia. Amalia is another one of those people that had to deal with me for several months. Not that I text every day, or
Twice a day.
sometimes 3 times a day. Amalia is going to be back up in just a moment because we have our flight instructors that are going to come up. So besides an adapted airplane, there's another critical element required when we send students to Purdue for training. Flight instructors like Amalia and her colleagues. This year we had 4 flight instructors to handle the needs of our 7 students. And to introduce those instructors, please welcome a longtime friend and supporter of Able Flight, a woman whose first airplane hangs at the Smithsonian and whose name is enshrined in the Aviation Hall of Fame, Patty Wagstaff.
Hi everybody, thanks for being here. This is my favorite event of all of AirVenture. I look forward to this every year. Every year I have a busy schedule here at AirVenture, but I never miss this ceremony. It's one of the highlights of my year when I get to see not only these new pilots, but the outstanding young flight instructors who teach them to fly. So join me in University, the Able Flight Instructors for 2023, Cameron Sansone, and Amalia Ioannidis, and Nick Shelton. I'm a flight instructor too, so I know how important they are. As incredible standard at Purdue is twice as high, and that's a lot to accomplish in just 6 weeks, but every year they're successful. Each year I have the honor of announcing the Able Flight Instructor of the Year, but I have another pleasant task to take care of first. Sporty's Pilot Shop donates a full ground school study package to each student every year, and they also want to give this year's instructor a gift, so they provided a gift certificate for each instructor. I think we have those here. Thank you, Sporties. So now I have the honor of announcing the Flight Instructor of the Year. This year, as did all of the instructors, he had 2 students to teach, and as you will soon see, one of his students faced some unique challenges. Both of his students did very well under his tutelage, and if that wasn't enough, he took on the task of ferrying one of the training planes from Lafayette, Louisiana to Lafayette, Indiana in just 1 day. These are 100-mile-an-hour airplanes. So you can do the math on that trip. I know how hard it is for me in a faster airplane to get here in 1 day. The Able Flight Instructor of the Year is Cameron Sansone.
Charles. Clayton's here. Yeah, that's cool.
So let's give all the instructors another round of applause before they leave the stage. Okay, Charles, now I'm going to turn it back over to you to introduce the Able Flight class of 2023. Thank you.
You know, every year I make a couple of visits to Purdue and I have the opportunity to meet these instructors. And every year I come home and I tell my wife, Sue, and thanks to Sue for all the work she does for this program as well. But I tell her, I said, I feel good about aviation, about the future of aviation when I see these instructors at Purdue. They take it very seriously. There are other universities, wonderful universities. This is the one I happen to have this experience with. So to me, they're very, very special people, and they develop a bond with our pilots every year. These are lifelong bonds. Anybody who's learned to fly, you remember your instructor. Now, let me take care of a little bit of business. The gentleman I mentioned earlier, Clayton Smeltz, he just arrived. He's right here. Raise your hand, Clayton. Clayton is the one who did those hand controls for his Vision Jet and is working with us on the Vashon Ranger project. I would like to note that the Flight Instructor of the Year award is given in memory of a great flight instructor and a founding board member of Able Flight, my friend Steve Merritt. We never want to forget Steve for the contributions he made. And now, our guest of honor for this special day. Let's see if they come out in the order that I asked them to come out in. So they're pilots, so who knows? Please welcome the Able Flight class of 2023, Leslie Irby. Come on. Tyler Cernick. Melvin Good. Andy Kirka. William Sherman. Dejan McCorkle. And Bobby Darr. With Leslie. Now, she may look a bit familiar to some of you who were here at this ceremony in 2019, and that's because that's when she received her wings as a new pilot. Prior to becoming paralyzed due to an auto accident, she had her life well planned, and that included becoming a pilot. She had already started some work with a unique program in the Atlanta area. That plan had to be put on hold, but with the help of Able Flight, she realized that dream. After she earned her certificate in 2019, Leslie took those skills and her license back to Georgia. And every chance she could, she kept flying. She stayed in touch. She let me know what she was doing. She also gained a third-class medical in order to train to become a private pilot. And her dreams don't stop there. Later, she hopes to become a sport pilot instructor so that she can pass this on to others and possibly a CFI. But she still needed a place to accomplish the goal of becoming a private pilot. So in a first for Able Flight, we agreed to consider Leslie for a second scholarship, and she applied and was accepted. We're proud to report that with approximately 26 additional hours, Leslie passed her check ride and is now a private pilot. So let me go off my script, because I do work, for just a second and tell you something about Professor Dillman over here. He does the check rides. He's the DPE. He's a very strict professor at Purdue and a very strict DPE, a great guy. But I have never seen him once use an exclamation mark. And when he sent me a note that said, Leslie passed, he put an exclamation mark at the end. And so I thought, does that mean, no. He said, she did great, and then put an exclamation mark at the end. So, because she already has a set of Able Flight wings from 2019, here's another first. The first repinning of those wings. To do the honors, we have a very special young man. Some time ago, Zach Rising approached Able Flight to ask if he could raise funds to help support the program so someone else could learn to fly. And he was successful with a vengeance. So much so he raised enough to support 5 scholarships. They're called the Blue 7 Scholarship in honor of his love for the Blue Angels. And he was on stage last year to award the first of those 5 scholarships. Please welcome Zach Rising to pin Leslie Irby's wings as a private pilot.
It was Zach.
You're there somewhere, Zach.
For all the work you did on that. And by the way, we got another project for you if you're interested. So.
Let's do it.
Tyler Cernick of Michigan was living the dream of for lack of a better word, a gearhead. And he was hired by the Ford Motor Company to work in their research and development department for a young man who loved to weld, fabricate, and build things that move. life was good. He also loved motorsports, including dirt track racing and motocross. Just 6 years ago, a mechanical failure of his bike caused an accident that left him with a spinal cord injury and started him down the road to multiple surgeries and years of rehab. In his essay for his Able Flight Scholarship application, Tyler wrote that rather than drown myself in pity, I had to dig deep and find a way to begin a new life. And that's what he's done. It may be a little hard for you to see, but that titanium wheelchair in which he sits, he built and welded many of the components himself. He started a business, and over the past few years, he accomplished another major goal. Through Able Flight, Tyler Cernick has become a licensed pilot. This year, we've chosen Tyler as the recipient of the ForeFlight Able Flight Scholarship. For over 10 years, ForeFlight has generously sponsored our program. And here to present to pin Tyler's Able Flight wings is Corbin Fanning, ForeFlight's Vice President of General Aviation. Thank you, Corbin, and congratulations, Tyler. By the way, Tyler's dad is here today. Dad, you're out here somewhere? Right here. Wonderful. Nolan spent many of his younger years in Texas and now lives in Denver. He's a tech entrepreneur, and just like Tyler, he loves fast cars and is a builder of wheelchairs, including the one he's using now, which he claims is the world's lightest and fastest. You're sticking with that claim, all right? You're good. It isn't likely that he would ever had a goal like that had he not become paralyzed due to a spinal cord injury in 2011. So why did Mel decide to become a pilot? Well, one of the reasons is because after earning his sport pilot certificate, he has ambitious plans for moving up into faster, higher performance aircraft. And for those of you who've been watching the news lately, you know this is all possible now. The new Mosaic proposal is going to change what they can do. This is wonderful. So keep your eye on that. But it doesn't stop there with Mel. He believes he can use his technical knowledge and skills to create an exoskeleton that can be worn by a pilot to operate existing controls in an unadapted airplane. And I would not count him out. In fact, a few years from now, you may read of this guy from Colorado who successfully developed such a device and uses it to fly his own plane. And if your memory is good enough, you'll recall the day you saw him get his pilot's wings here in Oshkosh. To pin Mel's wings today, we have a special guest for a special moment. I've known this gentleman as a supporter of Able Flight since shortly after I founded the program in 2006. Though he has worked for several aviation companies since then, he's always made sure each company became a sponsor of our scholarships. Let me just say that when I first heard he was leaving that first company, I went, oh boy, there goes the scholarship. Nope, we kept that one, and we got a new one when he went to the second company. So that's worked out really well. Today we're honored to announce a new sponsor of a named scholarship, Cirrus Aircraft. To our friends at Cirrus, welcome to Able Flight. And to pin Mel's wings as a new pilot, please welcome from Cirrus my friend, Patrick Smith. Thank you, Patrick, and congratulations, Mel. Our next new pilot is not, shall I say, lacking in confidence. As his classmates and his instructor will readily tell you, so we won't claim to have helped him with that part of it. But what we did help him with was the opportunity to start down a new and exciting path in his life by becoming a pilot. Andrew Kirka grew up in Alaska, and he had the kind of active childhood that those of us from the lower 48 think of when we imagine living there. He hunted, fished, hiked, and as a young athlete, Andrew had already started to accumulate championship trophies when in 2005, he was paralyzed when his ATV flipped when he was on a fishing trip. Since then, Andrew has adapted to his new life, and that includes becoming one of the top adaptive skiers in the world. I'm sure if I look over to Andrew right now, he will say not one of the best, but the best. Like I said, no lack of confidence for this young man. Over the past several years, he has taken his sports earnings and he bought a B&B in Alaska. And as you would expect, one of his attributes is that he's made it accessible for people with a disability. And Andrew makes it possible for those who need to do so to stay there at no cost. One other very special feature of that B&B is that just outside the door is a runway. So of course, Andrew wanted to become a pilot, because apparently that's a thing in Alaska. Who knew? This year at Purdue, he soloed first, and he was the first of the 6 pilots who trained to become a sport pilot to pass a check ride. To pin Andrew Kirk's wings as a pilot are 2 of our great friends. From Tempest Aero, they represent a company that's one of Able Flight's longest-term sponsors. With their support, they've been responsible for helping many people like Andrew become pilots. Please welcome John Herman and Vince Bechtel. I see that we have a change here. So Mike Allen, who's from Tempest, is going to help present the wings. Thank you, John and Mike, and congratulations. So sometimes when you're young, you have these unique opportunities right in front of you, and you fail to take advantage of it. Take, for example, this next new pilot. His dad is a pilot, and they live along a runway at a residential airport. As pilots, thank you, Sebastian, and congratulations to Sean. In 2012, Robert Dove was a Green Beret serving as a medic in Afghanistan when an IED took his right leg completely, his right arm below the elbow, and left him with multiple other injuries. Even in that terrible moment, Bobby didn't cease to be a combat medic. Only this time it was to direct his fellow soldiers how to help keep him alive so that he could be medically evacuated. To tell what happened at that time, let me share with you what his wife, Mary Elizabeth, wrote in a letter that accompanied his Able Flight scholarship application. She said, upon his arrival at Walter Reed, I became his caregiver as he navigated the waters of recovery. I watched him go from the epitome of health, strength, and fitness to being so weak and broken that he was unable to push a single button. Then, like a phoenix that rises from the ashes, he fought his way past every obstacle that was in his path, learning to do tasks one-handed and left-handed. Yet his relentless strength and conditioning to get himself out of the hospital less than 7 months past his injury. He returned to duty, serving on a non-combat deployment, all the while enduring chronic pain and undergoing numerous surgeries along the way. So Bobby and Mary Elizabeth were married in 2013, is that right? 2013, and had 2 children. After his injury and recovery for 5 years, Bobby ran a business as a charter boat captain and fishing guide. Then through the good folks at Veterans Airlift Command, he heard about Able Flight. Let me share with you a moment I witnessed on the first day of training this year. When we gave Bobby a scholarship, because both of his amputations are on the same side, we knew it was going to be challenging for him to operate the airplane's controls. But we decided to give him a chance. So on day 1, Bobby and I and his instructor, Cameron Sansone, who you met earlier, were beside the plane as Bobby practiced getting in and out and to see how well he could operate the controls. After a few minutes, Cameron and I exchanged a private glance, something along the lines of, oh boy, how's this going to work? Then I offered Cameron the advice I heard from one of our first Able Flight pilots, Sean O'Donnell. I told Cameron that Bobby is the expert in making things work in his life and to trust him to figure it out. After a few experiments and ideas, the next thing I heard from Cameron was that Bobby had come up with his own ways to safely do everything without any further adaptations. In other words, Bobby was just being Bobby, the man that his wife, Mary Elizabeth, knows so well. And after a few weeks, Bobby soloed, and then there were more solos, and cross countries, both mule and solo, and then he passed his check ride. Before you today is not the broken and weak man in a military hospital, but Bobby Dove, a licensed pilot, with the goal of further training and certification that will allow him to fly fellow veterans to their medical appointments, just as Veterans Airlift Command did for him. Just a year ago, we announced that an anonymous donor had established a scholarship in honor of retired U.S. Marine Sergeant Adam Kislewski, one of the many veterans who've been through our program. So here to pin Bobby Dove's wings, it is fitting that a veteran who served as a combat helicopter pilot in Vietnam and then created Veterans Airlift Command do the honors. Please welcome Walt Fricke.